This happened 4 years ago. I actually travel a lot with my job, which requires me to stay in a lot of hotels overnight. It's actually usually the same hotels that I stay in, so you kind of get to know the staff somewhat, recognize their faces, and have a general chit chat. One of the hotels that I go to quite a lot is a kind of small family-run house hotel. It's in South London. It's run by a husband and wife, Derek and Eunice, and their daughter helps out too, a very friendly girl named Shelley. Work hadn't required me to be in the area in, I'd say, just over 6 months. But a meeting had actually come up in London that I needed to attend, so I booked myself in there once more. When I arrived, I did remark to myself that Derek was particularly quiet. Eunice, she has a natural kind of cheery demeanour, but I could tell that she was even a little bit more muted than usual. They gave me my usual room, but the small talk was minimal. It was a Sunday evening by the time I had arrived. The meeting was first thing on Monday morning, so I needed to stay overnight Sunday. It made more sense. I decided to, head out, get some food, come back to the hotel early, get a good night's rest. After I returned from dinner, kind of headed straight up the stairs to my room. The hotel seemed pretty quiet that night. There definitely wasn't many guests staying there from what I could tell. So just kind of showered, got into bed, and after about an hour the phone in the room began to ring, which is unusual. It had never happened before, so of course I answered. The line was just static. It wasn't dial tone, it was like a connection was there, but there was nobody on the other end. I kind of called out a few times, but there was no response, so I hung up and tried to fall back asleep, thinking that it was a mistake. About 10 minutes or so passed, and it rang again. The same thing, just the same static. It was annoying because I had requested that they call me in the morning to wake me up, so I didn't want to unhook the phone in case it then wouldn't ring and wake me up in the morning, if you understand. The phone actually rang twice more in kind of short concession, again static. So I dialed reception to see if they were trying to contact me but couldn't make the connection on their end, and it just rang out. This was about 11 p.m, maybe just after. I ended up actually getting up, dressing, going downstairs to see if there was something more serious happening. When I was going down the stairs, their daughter Shelley, who worked there, she actually passed me on the stairs heading down. She kind of startled me. She was moving quite fast. I asked her at the time, "Is everything okay?" But she didn't reply and just kind of hurried out of view. So I thought then that maybe there was something serious going on. Maybe a fire perhaps, and that the alarms weren't working, or I don't know. I got downstairs and the reception was completely empty. Nobody around. I called out for Shelley, no response. Rang the bell, no one appeared. I actually ended up walking outside because I thought maybe people had gone outside, but there was nobody in the driveway. It's a small house hotel, so you can kind of see the car park and road. I actually ended up going back up to my room, and after a few moments I decided to call reception and see if Shelley would answer this time, but it just rang out again. It was now coming up to midnight, so I got back into bed. I was conscious of this meeting first thing in the morning, and I'd say after no more than 5 minutes, there was a frantic knocking on the door. And at the same time, the phone in my room rang again. So I grabbed the phone, being closest to me, greeted with the familiar static, slammed it down, muttered a few choice words, and went to the hotel room door. Once I opened it, kind of looked left, looked right, and saw Shelley beckoning to me to follow her. She said to me, "I need you to follow me." So I kind of quickly went back dressed and went back downstairs to the reception. Again, it was empty. No Shelley, no one out in reception, no answer to the bell. After a few moments, I kind of started to hear a noise of a low mumbling, like a kind of faint moans. And there, hidden from view, was Derek on the ground. It was obvious after a few minutes that he was seriously ill and wasn't responding, so I quickly called the ambulance, and thankfully they came pretty quickly. All the commotion had woken up Eunice, who apparently was sleeping in one of the rooms of the hotel. I kind of explained to her how I had found Derek at reception. Of course, she was distraught, and then kind of quickly gave me this piece of paper saying there was a number on it to call for someone to mind the hotel. And I just said, "Don't worry about that, Shelley's here, she'll be able to look after the hotel." And she just shoved the paper into my hand and went in the ambulance. Once they had left, some of the guests that were staying there looked, concerned and stuff, and then ended up going up to their room. But I noticed that there was no sign of Shelley anywhere, and I actually went looking for her in some of the back rooms, but I couldn't find her. I ended up doing as Eunice had asked and ring the number, which turned out to be a neighbour. I quickly explained the situation, and they came over. I told them in person then what had happened, and how I'd found Derek on the floor, and Shelley had told me to come down, and then I discovered him. And I remember at the time, looking back, the neighbour, when I said Shelley's name, just kind of replied saying Shelley, you know, with a question mark in their tone. And I said, yeah, Shelley. And she just kind of said, oh, I see. And then, you know, finished and saying, well, I'll leave you get some rest. So I went back upstairs and went up to my room. I couldn't sleep for hours, hoping that, you know, Derek was okay, and when something like that happens, your adrenaline is raised. The next morning when I came down, it was quite early, but Eunice, surprisingly, was standing at reception. She had come back to the hotel to gather some clothes for Derek. She actually hugged and thanked me for finding him, saying that I had saved his life, and that she couldn't bear to lose somebody else. I wished him a speedy recovery, hugged her once more, and checked out of the hotel. About 2 weeks later, I called to see how Derek was, and Eunice actually answered the phone. She told me that he had suffered a massive stroke and how he had a long road ahead of him, but they would receive help and care, and how they had hired someone full-time to help them with the hotel, so it would take some pressure off, I'd imagine. She just, you know, sweetest lady, kept on thanking me and saying I saved his life, and I said only for Shelley knocking on the door and calling me downstairs, I would never have stumbled upon him, and, you know, asked how was Shelley. And I remember the phone kind of went silent, and I thought we had actually been cut off, and then I could hear her crying on the other end, and I just tried to reassure her that Derek would, you know, get better, and then she just kind of finally spoke and said, when did you see Shelley? I told her the full story about the phone ringing non-stop, and then Shelley knocking on the door, and once I had finished, she, I remember she just shouted out, "Thank you, Shelley, Mum loves you." And then went on to explain that apparently Shelley had actually passed away a few months previously, which explained why they were both a bit off when I had arrived at the hotel. Apparently she had been ill for quite a while and then suddenly passed away in her sleep one night. So I kind of, you know, thought in my head, well, maybe does she have a sister or a twin? I asked if she had a twin or if they had another daughter, and the answer was no. I asked if there was any other person working on reception that night with them, and she said no. It was pretty shocking because it was Shelley that I'd seen in the corridor. I made eye contact with her, she spoke to me, watched her walk away, and I had seen her previously pass me on the stairs as well. It was definitely Shelley. Eunice just kind of took it as it was. She said she believed it was Shelley who had come back to alert me about her dad, and she just kind of thanked me again, and the conversation ended. A few months later, I actually stayed at the hotel again. My new receptionist was there, and she just said that Eunice and Eric were doing well and that she would pass on my best wishes. And I have actually stayed in contact since then. Derek, he continues to improve. Unfortunately, my job though has changed, so I'm rarely in London. But yeah, that's my paranormal encounter. I guess it's nice to know that your loved ones kind of look out for you. He probably would have passed away if I didn't find him that night.